Good morning, everyone. My name is Christopher Gatdula, and my partner, Gatdula-Plotado. We will be reporting the topic Three-Dimensional Framework in Grammar. So, let's begin.
Before we discuss about the three-dimensional grammar framework, let's define first what is grammar. The following definition were defined by different scholars of grammar. According to David Crystal, grammar is the business of taking a language to pieces to see how it works. While in Choker and Weiner, grammar is the entire system of a language, including its syntax, morphology, semantics, and phonology. When it comes to grammar teaching, according to Ellis 2006, grammar teaching involves any instructional technique that draws learners' attention to some specific grammatical form in such a way that it helps them either understand it metalinguistically and/or process it in comprehension and/or production so that they can internalize it. Cecil Murcia and Lonsdorne Freeman are one of the proponents of the three-dimensional grammar framework, and according to them, grammar is not merely a collection of forms, but rather involves the three dimensions of morpho, or the syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. So the grammatical structures not only have a morphosyntactic form, they are also used to express meaning, which is semantics, in context-appropriate use, or the pragmatics. Here is the pie diagram showing the three-dimensional grammar framework. The three-dimensional framework is a departure from traditional analysis of English grammar as it encompasses the three dimensions of syntax, semantics, and pragmatics, unlike other approaches to grammar teaching. This has been evolved keeping in view the communicative aspect of grammar. The three dimensions of the framework become three wedges in the diagram and are interconnected by arrows which are visible in the diagram. Therefore, they are not hierarchically arranged. Changes in one wedge would affect changes in other wedges, or let's say a change in one dimension involves a change in the other. The first dimension is form or structure, which indicates morphosyntactic and lexical patterns and phonemic and grammatic patterns. The second wedge, meaning or semantics, indicates lexical and grammatical meaning, and the third wedge, use or pragmatics, indicates social context, linguistic discourse context, and presuppositions about context. Now, to understand more about the three-dimensional grammar framework, let us use passive voice as an example. Let's start with the form. The dimension of form is associated with the way in which a grammar structure is built and organized within a text or discourse. In the terms of passive voice, the dimension of form would focus on recognizing that this grammar structure is constructed with the auxiliary verb be or get, followed by the past participle of the main verb and the participle by to indicate the doer of the action. The passive voice form is the verb to be is, are, am plus the past participle form. In terms of basic sentences pattern, the STV, TO is used in active voice sentences, while the S plus LV plus C, or the subject plus linking verb plus subject complement, is used in passive voice sentences. In passive form tenses, for example, she was taken to the hospital by her parents. The dimension of meaning has to do with the meaning a particular grammar structure conveys. The most inherent units in this dimension are words, derivational morphemes, multi-word lexical strings, and notions, where the meaning could be lexical or grammatical. In the case of passive voice, this grammatical structure focuses on putting the receiver of an action in subject position, and the subject is thus acted upon. In passive voice, the subject is the receiver of the action. In converting active to passive voice, the direct object becomes the subject. The dimension of use refers to when and why English speakers decide to use one particular grammatical structure over others that could convey the same meaning. In the context of the passive voice, this structure is used when the agent is redundant or unknown, when the speaker is being evasive or tactful, and to provide objectivity.
Example of use is when the object is more important than the doer of the action. For example, a 31-year-old man whose name is unknown robbed the bank versus about $500,000 was robbed by a 31-year-old man. Or when the readers do not heed to know who the doer of the action is. Example, baby Regine was delivered at 2:30 a.m. yesterday versus Dr. Iroles delivered baby Regine at 2:30 a.m. yesterday. Another example of use in three dimensions of grammar and passive voice is in scientific reports, the tone of objectivity. The trend now, however, is to stop relying on the passive voice. For example, the solution was desaturated by adding 50 ml water versus we desaturated the solution by adding 50 ml water. Because of this, one researcher, Macias 2010, employed this to analyze grammatical aspects. As discussed by some coursebook writers, he explored the three dimensions of form, meaning, and use of three-dimensional framework from the perspective of English passive voice in two ELP course books, and these are Reward by Simon Greenhall and New Headway by Liz and John Soares, 1996. The two books selected for the analysis were Reward and New Headway. His analysis of the two ALT course books revealed that the first book, Reward, offers unique choice and flexibility in teaching and learning English. Reward made explicit reference to form and made reference to meaning and use to only some extent. He found that more explicit and deductive approach was followed in this course book. Only few activities appeared to focus on contextualized practice. The other book, New Headway, focused predominantly on meaning and use. The activities in this book were seemingly consciousness-raising, according to Macias. Macias also found that this framework is of great relevance in grammar teaching. This text is part of a language teaching course designed to promote accuracy and fluency in the use of all four English language skills, which are speaking, listening, reading, and writing. It is also an inductive approach to teaching grammar. However, many researchers revealed their statements based on the two books. To begin with, according to Murcia and Freeman, Reward does not include other uses of the passive voice, such as when the agent should be concealed or to provide objectivity as in scientific writing. In the same way, it does not refer to the fact that intransitive verbs cannot be used in the passive, and therefore does not present the whole picture about the target language structure. A reason for this could be that the author had in mind the criterion of simplicity proposed by Swan, Leach, and Orr, and therefore sought to simplify the language description of the passive voice to make it more manageable by learners. This may help explain why Greenhall decided to offer a general rule of thumb with regard to the passive voice in the hope that students will be able to grasp more complex elements of the English passive voice, such as those dealing with intransitive verbs, stative verbs, and other different uses of the same structure at more advanced levels of the learning process. A rule of thumb is a heuristic guideline that provides simplified advice for some basic rule set regarding a particular subject or course of action. It is a general principle that gives practical instructions for accomplishing or approaching a certain task. However, New Headway seems to follow an inductive approach to teaching grammar, characterized by presenting language input containing the target structure, whereby learners can induce the rules in terms of form, meaning, and use through the context and practical examples. The aim is for the learners to be able to discover generalizations about the target grammatical structure and consequently internalize the rules with the teacher's assistance or by themselves. In addition to this, New Headway does not emphasize the dimension of form in the student's book. Nevertheless, from a perspective of second language acquisition, Elise et al. Declared that reactive focus on form can be considered as feedback which could be implicit, usually through a recast, or explicit, usually by direct correcting the error or by using meta-language to draw the student's attention to it. On the other hand, the activities in New Headway students' book are seemingly characterized by consciousness raising, that is, it includes activities that seek to get a learner to understand a particular grammatical feature, how it works, what it consists of, and so on, but not require a learner to actually produce sentences manifesting that particular structure. Though many scholars have been shared their ideas on how passive voice explained as the easiest example in illustrating the three-dimensional framework in grammar, this is however challenged by Larsen Freeman, who claims that such a view entails that the passive is derived from the active or that they are interchangeable, which is not necessarily true. She further adds that the use of the active and passive voice is determined by the similar reasons and that what should be done is to help learners identify when to use each. Finally, this study has been concluded that teaching the English passive voice or any other grammatical structure should involve not only the form, but also the meanings and uses in order to generate effective language learning. Next, teaching these three dimensions constitutes an essential part of a teacher's language awareness and knowledge, and as such, they become indispensable requirements to carry out a successful language teaching process. And lastly, it is precisely language knowledge and awareness which, along with experience, will inform teachers about where the learning challenge in teaching these dimensions will be, so that action plans are implemented to help learners succeed in complex communicative activities. And for the references, that's all for today. Good morning.